Ready to go here? Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order this regular City Council meeting. It is March 28th at 7 p.m., and so we are starting. If you are able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Next, we'll go to the open forum. We'll call into the open forum. If you wish to, you can do so by dialing 1-415-655-0001. You can use webinar access code 2452-449-0608, and the password is 1234. Please, when you come up front to make your comments, make sure you sign in and give your address so that we have everything for the records, and also state your name and address for the record. And as we said before, we're all here as neighbors, so we want to listen to what everyone has to say. So right now I have one card for someone here live that wishes to speak. Are there any more? Is there anybody calling in at this point? All right, thank you. So I'm going to call Kathleen Balaban to the podium. They were having trouble at the Planning Commission with getting it to show up on the screen, so I don't know if that's the same issue you all are having. Oh. Okay. Oh, now we have it fixed. That's good timing. All right, go ahead.
Balaban, and I live at 6526 Stevens Avenue South. First, I had a different agenda for tonight, but I've switched it because I saw the strategic plan at the workshop, and I'd like to speak to that. But I would like to speak to last week's or the last meeting. One of my fellow citizens had a presentation, a PowerPoint, and presented it, and I thought it was quite creative and very innovative, the way it was presented and shown, and I found it enlightening. However, since that time, I found that they are no longer allowed PowerPoints by citizens, and I'd like you to reconsider it because the security issue is not really an issue, because we know we can stop any hacking into our systems, but just look at that again, please, because that's stifling communication on our part. Now, I gifted you guys with your strategic plan. Okay, I read it. I did not read the whole thing. Fortunately for me, I had an accident and fractured my hip, and that's just a personal thing, so I'll get to reading it. But what I noticed in here is a lot of wonderful things, okay? But there's no place in here that it says build a relationship with the citizens. It says build a relationship with the staff and the council, but not the council to us. Not the staff to us, not how can we open up further information or communication. You know, my friends and fellow citizens, I've only been here for 5 years. Mary Chris has lived here her whole life, and Larry, not so long, but at least a good 30 years. Anyways, they don't know how to approach you. We don't. We just live and come to you, you know. We don't know the Robert's Rules of Hoyle, 1872, whatever it was that I quoted you at. Tell us, how do we do this? Well, geez, if you have a community issue, then first you start at the Community Services Commission. If it's a Development Commission, well, then you need to go to the Planning Commission. You don't tell us any of that. Nowhere Do we get that? And if we go onto your website, we have to go to each individual one to find out what each individual one does. Educate us so that we can come to you without being angry, without always crabbing, because you don't respond to us. So the only thing we have here is a venting tool. Venting. That's all we get to do here is vent. Well, that's not very nice. I guess is the best word. We're not communicating. We're just venting. Well, you're going to get negative every time we vent. That's not fair. So why don't you teach us? Why don't you put out something that tells us this is how you approach us? This is how we would, we can respond to you. And previously when we had minutes, we would bring documentation, and it was in the minutes. I had gifted the staff my document from last meeting, and it's not in minutes. So again, I'm not heard. We're never heard. So please, look at your strategic plan and include the citizens. Include us. We're not here. Yes, we're here only to build more and tax more and try to find out how we can fund more. But I don't see anything in here that addresses me and our communication and the lack therein. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Is there anybody that called in online? All right, and is there anyone here in person that wishes to speak? All right, then thank you for your comments, Ms. Balaban, and we will move on to the approval of the minutes of the Joint City Council and HRA work session of March 6th, 2023, and the City Council regular meeting of March 14th, 2023.
I move approval. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or comments or questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have approved both sets of minutes. Next, we're going to do a proclamation celebrating Ruth Ann Clay, and so I'm going to go over to the other podium. Sure. The more the merrier.
I did?
No, you don't have to because it's a proclamation.
Oh,
That's for
okay.
testimony. Great. So, you can look up there.
I don't know if I want to look at myself.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
watch you. You're looking at nicer.
All right. So this is the proclamation of the City of Richfield. Whereas Ruth Ann Clay cares deeply about the people, culture, and history of Richfield, and whereas Ruth Ann has been a longtime member of the Richfield community, including graduating from Richfield High School in 1962, and whereas Ruth Ann began her time volunteering with the Richfield Historical Society in 1979, when her father, George Duffy, the Richfield Historical Society president at the time, asked her to chair their annual ice cream social, and whereas that first event sparked an interest and curiosity that would drive her involvement with the Richfield Historical Society for decades, including being on the Historical Society's board, and whereas Ruth Ann has been and will continue to be a tireless advocate for the historical amenities of Richfield, including the Bee House, as she calls the Bartholomew House. And whereas Ruth Ann has been involved in numerous other community groups in Richfield and beyond, the other groups include Richfield Visions, the Boy Scouts, Parent-Teacher Associations, House of Prayer Lutheran Church, Richfield Amateur Radio Club, Minnesota Valley Hammers, and the American Cancer Society. And whereas outside of her volunteering work in the community, Ruth Ann cares deeply for her friends and family, including her husband Richard, their two sons, John and Don, her daughter-in-law, Sandy, and 3 grandchildren, many of whom are here today. And whereas the city of Richfield celebrates Ruth Ann as she brings pride to our city and community, Now, therefore, I, Mary Supple, Mayor of the City of Richfield, do proclaim that the City of Richfield, Minnesota, and its citizens, that Ruth Ann Clay is hereby extended our support as she has brought pride to our city and community. Proclaim this 28th day of March 2023. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. First of all, I do feel very deeply about Richfield, and especially the Richfield Historical Society. I'm sure one of these days we're going to approach the city and see if you can help us out. But this event was an absolute total surprise to me. And when I walked in and people stood up and started to clap, I was trying to figure out who the heck they were clapping for. And then my brother from Madison came up, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is for me. So thank you for this. Thank you for the support you do give to the city of Richfield. And we're a team. We all have to work together. So thank you very much.
And Ruth Ann was referring to a surprise party that was held, and they did actually surprise her. She wasn't expecting it. So, did anyone else want to add anything? Okay, Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. I got the chance to work with Ruth Ann when I was used to work at House of Prayer Lutheran Church and saw her volunteering and service there, and it was very clear that that was just one of many places that she plugged in. And so thank you for putting in twice as many years of service as I've been alive yet, and I hope we can all aspire to that level of dedication to our community. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any comments or questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? We've approved the agenda. Next, we'll move on to the consent calendar. City Manager Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. The consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the City Council in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further council action on these items is necessary. On tonight's consent calendar, item A, consider approval of a release of claims agreement with Kimley Horn and Associates, Inc., and accept reimbursement in the amount of $18,551 and a penny for construction costs incurred by the city due to a mistake on the 65th Street reconstruction project construction plans. Item B, consider the approval of 2 utility occupancy licenses agreements with Sioux Line Railroad Company at the railroad crossing at 65th Street and Pleasant Avenue as part of the 65th Street reconstruction project. And I submit both these items for your consideration as part of the consent calendar.
I would move to approve the consent calendar.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved the consent calendar. Next, we'll move on to item number 5, the second reading of an ordinance amendment to eliminate the minimum lot size requirement for a planned unit development. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Yes. So the executive summary, the purpose of a planned unit development, according to the Richfield Zoning Code, is to, quote, provide an opportunity for innovative and creative development that will, quote, complement existing neighborhood character. In exchange for flexibility with traditional zoning rules that would otherwise require variance approvals, a proposed PUD development is required to bring something unique, special, or beneficial to the community. Property owners may apply to receive a PUD zoning designation if the development is, quote, well-designed, and can be successfully integrated into the neighborhood. The current Richfield zoning code requires a property to be at least 1 acre in size in order to receive the PUD zoning designation. Most neighboring metro cities that staff reviewed do not have a minimum size requirement, including Hopkins, Bloomington, Edina, and Minneapolis. Although PUDs were originally intended for large integrated developments, such as master plan communities, the process need not be limited to such parcels. Richfield is considered a fully built-out city, and only 1.5% of our 10,586 parcels in the city would meet the 1 acre requirement. They provide a list of example potential redevelopment locations. The responsibility is on the applicant to show through the public hearing process how the quality of a proposed development is a reasonable trade-off for the requested zoning code flexibility. The negotiation allowed by a PUD typically results in a better project than would be dictated by strict application of the code. Staff finds no reason to exclude smaller sized parcels from applying for PUD approval. Does staff wish to add anything at this time?
Mayor, members of the council, no, I don't have anything to add.
Any questions?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to ask, I know the details of zoning code are not terribly approachable to everyday folks. If staff would be willing to share just some of the, like in previous PUDs, what are some of the things that might be included that would be considered in the, that's something unique, special, or beneficial to the community? Could you give some examples of what we've seen from that in past projects?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Whalen, members of the council. It can vary significantly from project to project. In some cases, it's just the fact that the council and the community has been looking for a specific type of development in an area. And in order to make that happen, some flexibility is needed. Things like setbacks, landscaping plans, things like that can be varied in order to get the type of development that our comprehensive plan calls for. In a lot of cases, we will ask them to do something above and beyond code requirements in exchange. For instance, one of the car dealerships along 494 installed solar panels on the roof in exchange for impervious surface requirements, and that was under the flexibility of a PUD.
So as a follow-up to that, so one of the things could be how much impervious surface there is. That could be one of the things that's talked about.
Yes, Mayor Supple. It tends to be dimensional requirements. It could be landscaping. It could be the facade, like the undulation of the facade. Any of those specific criteria that are listed in the zoning code could be varied under a PUD.
Okay. Other comments?
I realize they're just examples. I was curious why Astor Commons, which to my understanding is only proposed as just a straight residential property, is an example PUD.
I think it's an example of a possible PUD that couldn't actually be a PUD right now because the site is only half an acre.
Okay.
We haven't done the full planning review of that, but there are things in that development that will likely require flexibility, like setbacks due to the location of the bus stop, parking. And we talked about that at a work session, and perhaps a development like this doesn't need the same kind of parking that a typical apartment development would need. So things like that could be a possibility for a PUD if the size limitation was eliminated.
And I guess just to say, I am supportive of removing the size limitation because I don't think that's a useful way to judge this. But I do worry about that example specifically because when I hear of developments like that, that might indicate, for example, our zoning code doesn't really support transit-oriented apartments along Portland Avenue. And that seems like a flaw I want us to address rather than just find a way to get a better exception for that one property. So I would hope this doesn't lead us to create so many individual exceptions for each one rather than changing the rules for things that work universally in the future. So that's just a concern I have, but there are plenty of good sites that could have an interesting mixed-use thing under 1 acre, so I support the question before us.
Other comments or questions?
All right, I'll make the motion.
I have a couple of
oh, sorry.
questions that, well, they could go either way, it could be before or after, but
Might as well go.
I wanted to make sure I understood, because I've been, as liaison to the planning commission, been sitting in on those discussions. And one of the things that it was my understanding is that this only would apply in those districts that say planned in front of them. It's not like for the whole city. Is that, can you go into that, like which districts it applies to?
Mayor Supple, in order to have a PUD, our code requires that you rezone to a PUD district. So if it's already zoned with something with a P in front, like a planned general commercial or planned mixed use, then you could use this flexibility already. In general, what we tend to see come before the Planning Commission is a lot that is zoned for general commercial, C2. They'd like a PUD, so their request is to rezone to PC2, planned general commercial, and under that, have this flexibility with the conditional use permit.
So they would have to go through this extra step of rezoning it first, and then it could go through the PUD process and the hearings.
That's correct. We usually process it together. So there would be a public hearing at the Planning Commission to consider the rezoning and the plans for the development. Then there would be a first reading at the council of the rezoning only. And then there would be a second meeting that is a second reading of the rezoning and final consideration of the plans.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. It was my understanding that an acre is about a football field, and so it was really helpful to have these examples. So for instance, like the former bumper to bumper site is 66/100ths of an acre, so it's 2/3 of an acre. So for the people that are listening, that would be an example, or the Astor Commons, which is on 6613 to 6621 Portland, is about half an acre. And so those are the type of places, because it really helped me to have a concrete example of what we were talking about. So thank you for doing that.
All right, I will move that we approve the attached ordinance amendment to eliminate the minimum lot size requirement for a planned unit development and the associated resolution authorizing summary publication of said ordinance.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Councilmember Whalen.
I'll just add a comment, I believe similar to what Councilmember Hayford O'Leary shared, that my understanding of this is not that we're moving toward every development becoming planned unit developments. That's not the goal, but simply to allow the flexibility that if a developer is proposing something that we think is worth some added flexibility, that we have that option, and would still go through the full vetting process that was just described. So I'm in support of this and hope that we can get some good, innovative things from future developments.
Any other comments? Okay, go ahead. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Thank you. I just have one additional question, sort of as we have gotten more PUDs over the years, how do these work when we make other changes to zoning code? So if we were to reduce the parking requirement or reduce setbacks, or I think we changed our sign code, does that then retroactively apply to the PUDs, or does that have to, like, each district has to be individually changed to update with what our new general standard would be?
I'm not entirely sure. Let me rephrase that and you can tell me if I'm hearing you correctly. So if a development is approved with a certain parking ratio under a PUD and we reduce that parking ratio, that's a bad example. Let's say we approve a special, I'm going to need you to give me an example.
I think that the parking is probably the easiest to picture. So let's say you have a strip, well, it probably wouldn't be a PUD if it's a strip. Let's say a small mixed-use building, Kensington Park or whatever, had a certain parking specified at the time it was created as a PUD, and we later say reduce our commercial parking requirement. Can they now take out some of their parking spots and put something in there, or would we need to separately reduce the parking ratio that applies to that PUD?
Thank you for clarifying. So in general, what will happen with a PUD, if someone wants to make change, they will come into staff, we will discuss that change with them. We will review the code as it is now. So if they were approved under a certain parking ratio, but that parking ratio has been reduced, we are reviewing their proposed changes under the reduced parking ratio. If that parking ratio for some reason had been increased, we would be reviewing it under that, and they'd likely have to come back to you for additional approvals. But if the parking ratio has been reduced and they'd now like to add on, and that would be allowed under that, we would allow that. It would either be through a minor or a major amendment, depending on the size of that. But we would apply the new standards.
Okay, and the minor amendment would just be administrative? It wouldn't require the hearings?
It depends on the size and of the change. There are certain sizes or certain changes that require coming back to council, like changes in setbacks, closer to property lines, things like that. There are other changes that can be approved at a staff level.
Okay, thank you.
So to summarize, it is dealt with individually.
It is dealt with individually, but it is based on the current code. So we will review based on the rules that are in place now.
Okay. Other comments or questions? I do think anytime we can add flexibility but still have the public hearings and the review, it's a good change, and so I will be in support of this. Any other comments or questions? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. We have approved the attached amendment. Next, we'll move on to consider the approval of a resolution allowing staff to execute all necessary documents to opt in to the new opioid settlements involving Teva, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. New opioid settlements have recently been approved, giving municipalities until April 18th of 2023 to opt in. Due to this new round of settlements, the original Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, has been updated as well. The city's allocation for this round of settlement funds has not yet been determined. Does staff have anything to add for this item? No.
We're available for questions.
Okay. Then I would make the motion that we approve the resolution authorizing staff to execute all necessary documents to ensure Richfield's participation in the multi-state opioid settlements involving Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walmart, and Walgreens.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I had a question. Being that we are part of the public health department that's 3 municipalities, does this money come to us and then we pass it on to the health department? Or do they have separate funding and this is separate from that? Can you?
They'll have Jennifer Anderson come up and answer that question.
And I
I know that we are meeting with Bloomington Public Health now to talk about plans for spending the funding, but the city receives it individually.
And I apologize for not submitting the question earlier. It just came to me as we were talking about it now, so.
Mayor Supple, great question. City and county health departments have started to receive the money. So Richfield will be getting, with this initial settlement, over $562,000 that will span 18 years. This second round of funding that's coming is in addition to that, and we still don't know what that amount's going to be. The 3 cities, and I just left a meeting in Bloomington tonight, will be pooling that money to have a larger regional effect. I suspect that if there are some city-specific initiatives that we want to put in place, we can hold some money back for that. But this is very much a joint effort with the other 2 cities.
So it is a thing where it's going to be pooled together in the health department?
Yeah, there will be some sort of an agreement between the 3 cities, a contractual agreement coming down the road.
So that'll probably come back to us later?
Yep.
Okay, so basically we're saying we're opting in so we can become part of the settlement. All right. Are there other questions, comments? All right, if hearing none, we have a motion before us. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, we've approved the resolution authorizing the documents to opt in. Thank you so much. Next, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. At our last meeting, Mr. Ernster and Ms. Beth presented a series of graphs about Best Buy's request to terminate the minimum assessment agreement, or MAA, on their building. It was followed by some observations and questions, and I will send more detailed answers by email. I will send more detailed information to your questions by email. Mr. Ernst's graphs and observations contained inaccuracies, which are understandable because TIF is very complicated. I recommend that anyone that wants to learn more about the issue view the presentation from our financial advisors, Ellers, that they made at the March 6th work session. While there remains nothing formal for the council to consider at this time, we do want to make clear that elimination of the minimum assessment agreement would not reduce the tax payments to the city, county, or school district. The taxes paid to these jurisdictions are based on the pre-redevelopment value until the district is decertified in 2025. As we presented at the work session, the local impact would be to our HRA and to the payments made on Best Buy's own TIF note. These impacts would not, in any scenario, be made up for by taxpayers. Also, Ms. Kathleen Balaban made a series of requests at the council meeting. Ms. Balaban requested that we videotape all city meetings. We don't currently have the staff capacity or the technology in every meeting room that the boards and commissions meet in to videotape all these meetings. We will continue to videotape the council meeting, the planning commission, and the HRA EDA. She also requested that we provide an email for all boards and commission chairs with a city email address. We are hoping to do so. Staff are researching the best way to facilitate this because there is cost involved, process concerns, and then data practices considerations. Finally, she also requested that the Community Development Department not staff multiple commissions. And to clarify, CD only staffs the Planning Commission, the Housing Redevelopment Authority, and the Economic Development Authority, not the Charter Commission. That's staffed by the Executive Department. Also, the HRA and the EDA have the same governing board, and they have consecutive meetings. The boards and commissions are staffed by the department that has the subject matter expertise, which best matches the boards and the commission's mission. So we don't have any changes planned at this time.
All right. And is there anything else to add to your city manager's report?
Nope, that's it.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to claims and payroll.
I'll move claims and payroll.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve claims and payroll. Are there any questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We've approved claims and payroll. Next, we'll move on to hats off to hometown hits. Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to put on people's radar that April, let me get the date right, 15th, I believe, a Saturday, is the League of Women Voters is hosting the Eco Fair, which will be a chance to meet with, there's going to be vendors and resources there on a whole variety of sustainability, clean energy type topics, both so things like composting or if you're interested in putting solar panels on your roof or anything of that nature. And so would encourage folks to come. It's open to the public. I'm sure there'll be lots of people there handing out freebies as a kind of a typical conference vibe. So encourage folks to join in.
All right, thank you. And if you want to find out more, you can go to richfieldmin.gov/ECOFAIR. All right, Councilmember Christensen.
I have none tonight, no.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Hayfoot O'Leary.
I want to congratulate our Public Works and Engineering staff for winning infrastructure grant for Richfield Parkway and 66th Street, getting pedestrian flashers, which have previously been installed at our other roundabouts, installed at that one as well. It was a competitive funding process, and I understand they were one of few worthy projects chosen. So I'm really glad to hear that, and grateful for our staff always, making our public dollars stretch further by going and seeking these funding opportunities. And then related to that, also want to thank Will Wislow at the school district, who is constantly looking out for these grants and alerting us. So it's a great team, and I'm excited to see that project move forward.
Thank you. Earlier this month, the Richfield Chamber of Commerce had their Circle of Excellence Awards, and I want to congratulate all the award recipients, and one of them is a former Richfield employee, Bill Fillmore, who did more than 40 years of service here to the city, and he was honored as one of the recipients. So congratulations to all of them, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce. I would encourage people to go on their website and find out about the award winners, because it was pretty exciting to be there that day. I also want to do a shout out to the Richfield Public Schools. I was fortunate to be able to go and participate with their Job Olympics. And what they do is they have high school kids will put together a resume and fill out applications and go through practice interviews, and then they write thank you notes and go through the whole process from start to finish. And I thought it was amazing, and there were so many community volunteers helping out with that, people that came in and did the interviewing and came in and helped in various ways. So thank you to all of them. Councilmember Whalen already mentioned the Eco Fair. Also, the Richfield Foundation is starting the planning for their Taste of Richfield, which is going to be on May 11th. So if you would like to volunteer to help, or if you would like to be a sponsor to help for the Richfield Foundation, you can go to their website. And they've also added a designated driver ticket. So if you're interested in going and you're not somebody that partakes in alcoholic beverages, you can still go for the fun atmosphere and be the designated driver for your group. So you can find their information at www.richfieldfoundationmn.org, and they will have all the information about the Taste of Richfield. I also want to do a shout out to the Minnesota Whitecaps, our own women's professional hockey team. They made it all the way to the playoffs for the Isabel Cup. And I was watching, it was about 10:30 on Sunday night, and it was 3-3 and went into overtime. Sadly, Toronto won 4-3, so they didn't bring it home, but they got this close. So shout out to the Whitecaps, and next year we're going to bring home the Isabel Cup to Richfield, so that'll be fantastic. And finally, we had another round of commission interviews, and thank you to everybody that came and interviewed for Advisory Board of Health, for the Human Rights Commission, and the Richfield Tourism Promotion Board. And so in April, they will be announcing who's going to be appointed to those. So is there anything else that anyone needs to add or wants to add? All right, thank you to everyone who came to the meeting, and I was told that technically we should now be taking a vote, so if someone would like to take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you.